Welcome to Tech in the Right Direction, the podcast. Let's take tech in the right direction to drive social change and close the employment, pay, and culture gap for women in technology. This podcast is focused on helping turn ideas into action and create opportunities for women to advance in the dynamic technology industry. I hope this podcast will inspire and motivate you to encourage more women and girls to seek or grow a career as a woman in technology. Stories about the journey of amazing women in the tech field starts right now. Welcome to Tech in the Right Direction, the podcast. This week, I'll be speaking with Donna Loughlin. Donna is the founder of LMGPR and is known for her work with Futurists and Innovators. She has launched more than 500 companies, taking them from stealth to market leaders since forming her agency in 2002. She is also the host of Before It Happened, a leading narrative podcast featuring visionaries and the moments, events, and realizations that inspired them to change our lives for the better. Donna excels in the realm of storytelling and uses those skills to propel new companies into the mainstream. Welcome to the show, Donna. I'm so excited to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm excited to join you today. And it's a cool 72 degrees in Silicon Valley today.
Yeah, in Arizona, it's 68, if you can believe it or not. I mean, it's just weird weather, but we're loving it. We can actually open our windows today.
Nice.
Beautiful. Well, let's get started. So, Donna, as a woman in tech, can you share with us your career journey and how you got to where you are today?
Well, I say it's pretty much a happy accident. I didn't aspire to have a tech career, but I know back in the really early years, I was constantly my father's, I'm going to call his popular mechanics aide. So anything that my father was doing that was fixing or making something, I was always there. So I always had this curiosity factor of being able to be. Didn't make any difference if it was under the hood of a car or under the hood of an airplane or going to some science fair or National Geographic type of event. I was there, so it was always kind of in the back of my upbringing. But I was a journalist first, and I was a business and economics reporter. And when I came to back to California to get my master's at UC Berkeley, I had options, very few options as a reporter, but the biggest and the most prolific option was to work in tech. So that was a natural migration for me, was to take that knowledge that I had as a child and all that curiosity of news reporting and then apply it into a tech reporting job.
That's great. I love that your dad exposed you to so many things at an early age that got you probably interested and encouraged to do something in tech.
Yeah, I know that STEM education is something that we hear daily now, but when I was a child, the word STEM was it was not a word that was used. It was just kind of organically that you went to school and you did your reading, writing, and arithmetic, right?
Right.
And so I'm thrilled now that girls are encouraged and there's genderless education. But in the 70s, there was still a very much nomenclature that was boys math or that was girls math. Yeah. And so I took all the hard stuff, all the hardcore stuff I could get. And oftentimes I was the only girl in the classroom, and I aspired to take the calculus and the trig and the biology and the physics and everything else that I could get my hands on. But it was discouraged more than encouraged. And now I'm so excited because my own daughter is, studying, neuroscience and social science and molecular biology and all these things that I didn't even aspire to do. And even younger generations, K through 12, that I volunteer with, these kids are so bright and they have so much enthusiasm and resources. And I think people like us are gateways to encouraging that enthusiasm.
I completely agree. So it is changing. I mean, definitely girls are going more into sciences, but we have a long way to go to get more girls aware of technology and STEM so that, in 20 years we're not in the same problem of declining women in technology.
Well, not just that, and there's the technical difficulty, and jobs are changing, right? And so I often see job postings that will say open for 6 months to a year, and I talked to a couple of my professional, you know, STEM educated women that are engineers and scientists, and they said, well, just the skill sets aren't there, and so we need to encourage the younger generation, and regardless of gender, there's gender, the borders are open. and
That's right.
just encouraging kids to really explore. And I know it's been hard during COVID for kids not having maybe some of the hands-on experiences, but I remember just as a kid, little things that made a difference in my life, such as collecting rocks. I know that sounds really trivial, but I had a shoe box that I had decorated with paper that looked like nature. And it started out as a Girl Scout project, but then it just continued. And that little box of rocks became an entire project that ended up becoming a science fair competition that ultimately led to a scholarship, a very sizable scholarship in my junior year of high school. And so those little things like that do matter. So whether it's going to a science museum or watching a science show or a YouTube flick that's, about, climate change or sustainability or, going to space and aviation and all these things, all that exposure helps kids at a very young age.
Absolutely. Very impressive. I love your background and how you're just, you had that desire to be in the harder stuff, the boys type stuff at that time. But, now it's like it's really sought after. So that's amazing. So you're an expert working with futurists and innovators. So tell us more about the work that you do in this space. It's really fascinating to me.
Yeah, so I really am in this nice, the Silicon Valley has really no boundaries either. Silicon Valley is really, kind of the world of innovation and futurists and visionaries. So I work with a lot of, I'm going to call them futurists and innovators of not just products, but big ideas as well, things that are actually cause driven. So sustainability and robotics and artificial intelligence and any product that ultimately or technology that can help make our world better, not just our lives better, but our world better. And so working with these experts sometimes starts on a napkin or a whiteboard. Sometimes there's no whiteboard, so we just start on a napkin. It's even started on a paper towel or a menu in the past. And sketching out not just what they've created, but imagine the possibilities of change. And that's really where I come in, is looking at their authentic back-end story and helping them bring it to life so that people like you and me can actually then say, aha, so this is actually going to change the way, we farm. This is actually the way to change, the mobile workforce or the industrial workforce, right? So robotics and artificial intelligence often can be seen as, ooh, the scary technology. But when you apply them and put them in the world that we live in, the real world, then you start seeing the capabilities and the possibilities. Oh, these robots can save lives. These robots could actually prevent someone falling from a death-defying skyscraper cleaning the windows, right? So there's just a couple of examples of standing back and looking at not just the technology and innovation, but it's a lot like, the Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the Places We Will Go. It's like, where is the imagination and where is this innovation going to take us? And that's what really gets me excited.
I love that. That gets me excited too. And it just, you look at our technology and you say, oh my God, 5 years ago, I would never imagine, or 10 years ago, I'd never imagine that my phone would be my camera, my clock, my everything that I do, I live in that phone and the apps, and it's just changing so fast.
Do you
And
remember your first phone camera?
I do.
And how that exciting moment?
I know. And now every time I get a new phone, it gets better and better when I think it's not even possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Would you
yeah,
imagine what somebody like, just any of the great photographers in history, if they had this access that we have today?
I know.
And it just it was like astounding. Like, would, what would the imagery look like? And I recently interviewed Steve Sasson, who is part of, he's the creator of the digital camera as we know it. And he
Okay.
created it at Kodak. And so I was fascinated by his back end story just because I really didn't know. I was curious, like, how was the camera created? And there is a whole society of innovators, and I'll think of the name in a second here. That basically every year there's an award that goes out to innovators, and he was one of the honorees last year. And when I discovered him, I couldn't hear. The story was just amazing. And then he had a moment where he was at Yellowstone National Park, and he looked around and he saw everybody taking pictures of the geyser with their mobile phones. And that's when he realized that his invention had a purpose. So going back to the idea of having purpose, right? And
Big
like you, sometimes I go to the store and big box store or a tech or computer store, whatever they may be. National Inventors Hall of Fame. Take a look at that. It's an amazing site of inductees from decades back. We're talking, when we go back all the way, century, actually. I was not just decades, but scientists and inventors and explorers and people that have done just amazing things. So take a look at that. And I think it really goes back to that, science fair that I was talking about, is that these early development things that we expose kids to, whether they're museums or digital content, that I looked through the National Inventors Hall of Fame, and I was my it was everything from just, medicine and technical, gadgets that I have in my home or I have on my body. I mean, it just any and everything that has been invented that is the original McCoy, so to speak, is featured on that site. And I've shared it with my 4-year-old great niece. And I said, look at this. And she got so excited because there was the creator of video. Well, what's her number one thing to do when she's not playing with blocks and puzzles is video.
Right. That's amazing. I will definitely check out that site. I'm curious now. So I understand you've launched over 500 companies. Wow. Can you tell me more?
Well, thankfully not all at the same time.
Yeah, I would be asking you, when do you sleep?
I love sleep. I have something in common with Ariana Huffington. I love my sleep. Over a course of 20 years, I started my business shortly after I adopted my kids from Russia, and I wanted to create agility, not balance, because there's no such thing as balance. I really don't, unless you're in the balancing act. But I wanted to create a better lifestyle, and I love working with emerging markets and emerging technologies, and that's really my sweet spot. So I was working with artificial intelligence and autonomous and IoT before they were in consumers' hands, or if they were industrial grade. So those, all these bright-minded, innovators and technologists and scientists that I work with are really at the early stages of these technologies before they become real products. So those 500 plus companies, and right now I'd say I'm probably working with 10 that fall in that same category. None of them are alike. And there is a template process that I put into place, which is sitting down. It starts with a napkin, as I mentioned, helping them curate their authentic story, not losing sight of like, why did they actually get out of bed? Why did they actually decide that they were going to mortgage their house, sell their car, trade down their dog to a cat, or whatever it took, right? To bring their idea to market. And that's what I catalog this kind of group of people as acorns. Every oak tree ultimately starts from an acorn, and these acorn ideas and these thoughts actually are planting seeds for something bigger. And there's a lot of talk in Silicon Valley and in the financial sector about unicorns, and the unicorns are these billion-dollar companies, right? I've worked with a lot of publicly traded companies, and they're fantastic to work with, but you can't move as fast as you can with an acorn, because we're pre-compliance, pre-public, trading. So we have a lot more creativity and a lot more agility to make things happen. And so the template in place would allow me, to work hands-on, tell that authentic story, take the story to market, test it, forget, focus group, feedback, experience, and then bring it to market. And we typically can do that under 90 days, believe it or not. So it's fast and furious, but it's fun.
I bet it's fun. I'd love to learn more about that. The template sounds amazing.
In fact, I have one that I did in 10 days. I shouldn't admit that because that's not going to be my standard, but I had 10 days to bring an electric motorcycle product to market out of Canada, Damon Motors. And now it's 2 years later, and we have more than 40 million in orders.
Oh my God.
So we went from acorn to very fastly growing, it will be a unicorn company. And I'm really proud of that, the types of things that we can do collectively as a team. And when you have focus and you are, the leader of the pack, literally in this case, and being disruptive, that's a lot of fun.
Well, obviously your template is stellar, because if you can take it to market in 10 days, that has to have every little piece in there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, very interesting.
Did you know that there is an increase in the number of women leaving the tech industry? As a woman-owned business, Directions Training has made it our mission and passion to change this statistic. That's why Jennifer created this podcast. We showcase insight from everyday women for everyday women in the tech industry. Do you know other people that would benefit from tuning in? Share the link and help us drive the advancement of women in the tech industry. Do you have a journey or know of someone that our listeners would benefit from hearing about? Reach out to us at directionstraining.com/podcast. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and wherever you find your podcasts. Now, back to the show.
So let's talk about your podcast, Before It Happened. Please share with us the focus and ideal guest for your podcast.
Yeah, before it happened, I was going to sit down and write a book, and I'm still going to get to it, but writing a book just takes a little bit more quiet time than I've had to do. So Before It Happened is really a lot of the thoughtful conversations that I've had with scientists and innovators and futurists. And these aren't all technology people. These are people that are really cause-driven. So looking to change the world. And I really focus on that moment before it happened, before they became the company, that they ultimately became. So I'll give you an example. Monarch Tractor is a autonomous, sustainable electric tractor company. And what's exciting about that story, as much as they're being disruptive and changing the market, their real exciting back end story is that there was a culmination of a transportation expert, a fourth generation winemaker from a legacy winemaking family, the Mondavi family, an artificial intelligence expert, and a Tesla Gigafactory EV expert. The fact that the four of those came together and were able to brilliantly develop and create the Monarch electric tractor is the back end story. That's the before it happened story. Everyone just sees the excitement around the tractor, but the journey would have never have happened if that moment didn't happen. And that's what I really
I love
zoom in
that.
on. Yeah.
I-
So it really take you on a journey before it happened, before the innovator and the ideas. And these are, Disney uses the word Imagineer. These individuals are really that Imagineer. So my guests include every, from STEM education to I have, Tyler Florence, who is a well-known celebrity food chef. I just had an expert on sprouts who, thinks and intends on that the world could actually be fed on just pennies a day. I have automotive and transportation experts. I have professors. I have Harvard and Yale professors. I have Stanford professors, neurologists, neuroscientists,
I love it.
even the inventors of the sports bra that will be
And the
on in a few weeks.
beginning story is so inspirational, I think, because it gets people in that mode to say, oh, I could do that,
Yeah. Well, I really want people to be excited to maybe they have their own dream or idea that they want to bring to market, whether it's a business, a restaurant, or just looking at something differently. And I think it really comes back to I was describing photography. If we look at the world differently and if we look at light differently, morning light is different than evening light than afternoon. And if we look at each day in that regard, we're going to see things differently and the possibilities open up. So I'm hoping that when people listen to the various episodes, that they'll be ignited and excited to go out and facilitate change too.
Yes, no, I agree. I just think that so much, I love what you said about look at the world differently. The morning light is different than the evening light. And what came to my mind is that, Jennifer, you need to really go and see the light because sometimes I'm so overwhelmed with my schedule that I don't stop to smell the roses. And that's when the best ideas come to you, is when you can stop to smell the roses. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think what started with this podcast is I had this, it was there. And how I took a long morning walk with my dog. I have a little wire fox terrier. I don't know who was walking whom. I think she was probably walking me. And I finally just said, okay, I got to do this. And I need a team because I don't know, there's a lot of DIY ways to do these things. But I was like, I needed a team. So I've assembled a great writer and a great producer and marketing and collectively put it together. I didn't follow my own rule, I will say. My 90-day rule, because I did have it in my head for over a year. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. And then I finally just said, okay, I'm not waiting anymore. Right. So when we first rolled out, within the first 90 days, we had the makings of the show and a calendar and guests. But we officially launched in early summer. And now we're booked all the way through the first few months of next year. Nice. with things are in the vault, which is great. And now I actually have time, don't laugh, to start my book.
Nice. That's hope for me, because I want to have a book too. I want to write a book, but haven't got there yet.
Yeah. And the morning walks. So I see the new light in the morning walks.
Yeah, that's right. That's great. You're inspiring me, Donna. Okay, so you also love the art of storytelling, which you're doing an amazing job. You inspire me by the stories you tell. How do you use storytelling to propel companies into the mainstream?
Well, every day I'm crafting new stories because the market changes. Anything can change, right? And so as a communicator, you can't just live in the bubble of isolation of that your company story, your products are not are not necessarily going to sustain or weather the storm. So looking at the market conditions, looking at the meaning stock market as well as competition, and looking at any vulnerabilities, looking at customer behavior, social communication, social commentary. All those things can make or break a company brand and perception, right? And so continuously looking at, where there's new opportunities, not just you launch a product and the work isn't done. I always tell people it's just begun. So how do you ensure that you're always going to be relevant is one of the questions I constantly look at my clients and look at not just my clients, but look at other things. I don't work with Apple Computer, but I love to look at Apple Computer in general to see what's next and how they bring products to market, because they're always relevant, right? And I think that's one of the things that most companies aspire is they not only want to be on the cutting edge of innovation and technology, but you need to make sure that you're capturing the hearts and minds of your customers. And so staying relevant is a huge component of something that I constantly are looking at.
Yeah, no, that's great. So what's the one thing you wish you had known when you began your career? You're incredibly successful, but have there been any lessons learned?
Oh, daily. The one thing that I wish I had learned was to probably just I think I would have taken more time early on to collect all the addresses and the phone numbers. Remember the big Rolodex that we had before LinkedIn? Well, when LinkedIn came along, I stopped collecting, the equivalent to business cards, because you just connect with people in LinkedIn. Right. But LinkedIn has become such a powerful business tool. And I still collect business cards, in the few meetings that I do in person lately. But the giant Rolodex that was passed down to me when I was a reporter at Reuters, and it was this massive triple Rolo card index, right? The kind that you spin around and you tape the.
I had one of those.
Right. Well, the managing editor, he was retiring, and he gave it to me, and he says, "This is yours, kid. It will probably be useless in 10 or 20 years." It was almost like he forecasted what was going to happen. And I kept that for many years. But I wish I'd kept more business cards, because I feel I'm really connected and like to stay connected. Mm-hmm. But I know along the way, I've lost a few contacts in the mix pre-LinkedIn that I would have liked to go rediscover and put in LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's so true. Actually, not too long ago, about a week ago, I went through a drawer and I was cleaning it out, and I had I'd say maybe 300 business cards in there. And so I went through each one of them and sent out a LinkedIn request. I'm like, I don't know if these people are going to remember me or not, because these were the old days, and I was pleasantly surprised how many people accepted my invite. And so, it does come in handy. So you're right.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing I wish, I have no regrets, but I think one of the things that I wish I had done, I went to UC Berkeley, and I was constantly going through the School of Engineering and Sciences, because that was my major. And I was hoping the DNA would just fall on me. And so over the years, I'm a little bit of a collector crab. And over the years, I've assimilated a lot of knowledge, non-textbook knowledge, but from brilliant people that I've worked with. But I wished I was actually brave enough to challenge the status quo and have gotten a STEM-based degree, or at least a minor journalism with a minor in computer science or in mechanical engineering or something. Mm-hmm. But I that would be the only thing that I think I would have done differently, because I think it would have been a huge advantage. And going back to my cry for on STEM is, I think the more STEM education that we have, the more cognitive skills that we have, the faster we can run and learn, particularly when you're working in an arena such as technology, where I am, right? And so I've learned, and sometimes slowly, but always steadfastly, things that maybe I could have learned, in a classroom, but I learned them on the job. And so I still think that's, my career has been really good to me. Give me the opportunity and the fortitude to be able to learn a lot of science and math-based things, literally being paid to do it.
You've done an amazing job. Yeah. So yes, as much as you could have had that STEM piece, I think you've made up for it in many ways and got that STEM education in different ways. So that's great. So, who are three people that have been the most influential to you?
Wow. Well, my dad, of course, because of his constant taking me to the library and exposing me to, everything from, science and space and archaeology and geology and aviation and everything in between. When I was about 11 years old, I won a writing contest, and I was able to go on the Jacques Cousteau explorer ship and they came to San Francisco Bay. And I was one of 10 kids, and I got to spend 30 minutes with Jacques Cousteau and his son, one-on-one, and ask them anything. And I remember I was scared.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they gave me saltines because I was seasick. and I just like, okay, this is that moment you've been waiting for. And now, what are you going to do? One of the first papers that I wrote, professional, when I say papers, but an article that I wrote, happened to be all about the sea and, the pollution and the environment. And I pulled that experience out of my back pocket just when I needed it, right? It was like I can actually dig. I have a resource for that. I can dig back. So that was very influential because that actually gave me this street cred that I needed, that I actually could call upon, Jacques Cousteau's son and the research group, and they responded. Wow. And that gave me some clout. And I think the three, I'm gonna have people angry at me. There's so many.
It's hard to narrow it down.
Yeah. Well, I think probably one of the first key influencers that I had when I was working in the editorial on the side of things, and I got more red ink coming back in on my stories than I had black ink. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And you can always go from good to great. It's really hard to go from great to greater. And I had an editor named Alana Halevi, and I don't think she's alive anymore, but she was amazing. And she pushed me and she pushed me and she pushed me. And then one day I just decided that I was going to change headlines. Okay, now keep in mind I'm working for a nationally known Pulitzer Prize winning newspaper. And I'm all of 24. What do I know? But I decided I was going to change some of the content and some of the headlines to the way I thought it really should have been written. And that did not come back with any red ink. Wow. I realized that I was writing. I kept trying to write, not from my soul, but I was trying to write from somebody else's perspective. And when I realized that I needed to write from my perspective and see the world differently, so going back to the scene, then I knew
the passion came out.
That was really my pivot, which launched my editorial career, which I still to this day look to that as being core to what I do daily with my PR agency and with my podcast and working with my clients, is that always know your authentic source, know exactly where you come from. Don't lose sight of that. I grew up in back of a printing business. I was reporting when I was 10 years old, but I didn't realize that ultimately was going to be my future job. I just did it because it was fun. And I had access. My family owned community, a whole set of community newspapers, and owned the printing publishing company that brought those to market. So I had access. And I was the only one. I'm one of four girls, and I was the only one that took that access. So I think that's the trifecta that kind of helped define, my career.
That's great. Oh my gosh. I love that. So this has been amazing, Donna. So thank you so much for that. In closing, what advice would you give to a woman who's considering a career in tech?
Wow. Never give up. Constantly look for new career opportunities. Seek out experts that might know more than you. Take classes, get certified, take evening classes, do whatever it takes to advance yourself and to create a sisterhood and a network of other women who are in technology and STEM. And in that sisterhood, there's going to be a lot of great men as well. So I think, women in technology, we're a little bit of a minority, but there's some amazing men I work with every day that
Allies,
that do not see the divide. And I think that to me is inspiring. I'm kind of curious what the next 20 years is going to be like.
Yeah, we need male allies in our life to get us to that, equality range that we're trying to get to. And there's so many supportive men that do such an amazing job. So I'm glad you said that. And I think what you said earlier kind of resonated with me too, is to be authentic, right? Bring that authentic source to everything that you do, because that's going to make it real. That's going to show your passion. That's going to show who you are.
Exactly.
No, that's great. Well, Donna, please share with our listeners how they can get a hold of you.
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, one of my favorite places to hang out, as Donna Loughlin, and that's Loughlin. Or you can go to Before It Happened Show on Instagram or beforeithappened.com. And then also, if you want to email me, you can email me at donna@lmgpr.com. And the LMG stands for Leadership, Momentum, and Growth, because that's ultimately what I do. And that is also the domain name for my business site, which is an emerging tech PR agency, lmgpr.com.
Great. Well, Donna, this was a pleasure and an honor to have you. I really appreciate your time and your insights. Very, very impressive. Your career has been just fascinating to kind of go through and hear the stories. So thank you so much, and hope to have you on a future show. Thank you for listening to Tech in the Right Direction. Please take a minute to subscribe or follow so that you never miss an episode. Also, don't forget to like, share, and comment. Thank you. See you next week.
From IT skill enhancements to end-user adoption training, Directions Training is your resource to help optimize the effectiveness of your technology investments. Over 500,000 students have taken advantage of our wide selection of technology and business training solutions, covering the most popular applications today, such as Microsoft 365, Azure, Windows 10, and more. As a podcast listener, we invite you to take advantage of an exclusive offer. Receive 30 days of free access to our Microsoft official curriculum on-demand courses for IT professionals or end users. Visit us at www.directionstraining.com/podcast to claim this offer today. Hurry, this offer is only available for a limited time. Success is a journey. Ask for directions.